"No one has ever come out alive," the old scout had said, voice trembling. Ethan Calloway didn't believe him. Not completely. Danger didn't scare him, fear made him sharper. The crimson sky above the jagged cave mouth churned like fire. Smoke curled from the cracks in the rock. The air smelled of ash and sulfur. A low rumble vibrated beneath his boots. Ethan stepped closer to the mouth, careful with each footfall. Shadows twisted like living things across the rock. From the darkness inside, a pair of eyes glowed, a molten amber that burned through the dim light. A roar erupted from the depths, shaking loose stones. The sound was more than loud. It rattled bones, froze blood. Ethan's chest tightened, but his mind raced. He scanned the cave walls, counting the patterns in the shadows. He could see the faint traces of claw marks, scorched rock, and the twisted remains of explorers who had tried before him. He swallowed and adjusted the strap of his satchel. Something moved behind the amber glow. A wing unfurled, larger than a small building, membranes glistening in faint phosphorescent light. Ethan's pulse accelerated, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he crouched slightly, examining the creature's posture. It wasn't moving randomly. It was guarding something. Protecting. That single thought gave him focus. If he could understand it, maybe he could survive. Then came the faintest sound, a whistling, soft, almost human in its tone. Ethan froze. Dragons didn't whistle. Something else was in the cave. Something small, fragile, lost. His heart thumped harder, curiosity flaring. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. The amber eyes followed. The wing twitched. The creature inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring, sensing him, measuring him. Without thinking, Ethan reached into his pack and pulled a small metal container. He opened it. The smell of roasted herbs and dry bread escaped, wafting into the cavern. The dragon snorted, a sharp hiss that sent sparks from its mouth. It recoiled slightly, shaking its massive head. Ethan held his breath. The creature was curious and cautious. That moment, brief and fragile, felt like an opening. He took another step, heart hammering. His boots crunched over gravel. A rock shifted beneath his hand. The dragon's roar returned, louder this time, echoing off the cavern walls. The sound was like a wave sweeping toward him. His ears rang. The ground trembled. Stones fell around him. He ducked instinctively. Sparks of fire licked the air as the dragon lunged. But it stopped, suddenly, nostrils flaring toward the smell. That small human scent of food, familiar, warm, alive, held it in place. Ethan's fingers tightened around his container. He had to act fast. Moving slowly, he sprinkled a small trail of crumbs along the cave floor, leading toward the glow of the whistling. Every step counted. Every move had consequence. The dragon shifted, tense, but it did not attack. He could feel its massive body vibrating the air, a living wall of danger behind him. As he approached the source of the whistling, he saw it, a tiny creature clinging to a broken toy, trembling. Its scales glimmered faintly, almost silver, under the dim cave light. Its eyes were wide, full of fear. Ethan's chest clenched. This wasn't just a dangerous place. It was grieving mourning. The whistling was not random noise. It was sorrow. He knelt slowly, careful not to startle it. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. "I just want to help." The dragon's roar shook the cave again, sharper this time. Ethan's head snapped up. The massive guardian had stepped forward, wings stretching wider, talons scraping the stone. It was testing him. He could feel the power in the air, waves of strength and danger that could crush him in an instant. But the dragon hesitated again, nostrils twitching at the aroma of his food. Ethan's pulse raced. He had found a weakness, a leverage. Courage and intelligence were his weapons. Not brute force. Not speed. Not luck. He set his container down carefully and began to cook a tiny portion of his rations, fanning smoke toward the dragon and the trembling creature. The whistling stopped. The tiny creature tilted its head, sniffing the air. The dragon's wings lowered fractionally. Ethan exhaled slowly. The cave seemed to hold its breath with him. This was only the first step. One small success, a glimmer of possibility in the midst of unimaginable danger. A sudden crash echoed from deep within the cavern. Rocks fell. Sparks danced. The dragon's roar erupted again, louder and more furious. Ethan froze, knowing the next seconds could decide life or death. Yet in that terrifying instant he understood something. He could survive here. Not by hiding. Not by fighting blindly. But by being human, brave, clever, compassionate. And maybe, just maybe, he could change the rules of this cave entirely. Then, from the deepest shadows, a second pair of glowing eyes appeared, larger, brighter, and stranger than the first. The whistling resumed, faster, more urgent. Ethan's heart raced. The cave had more secrets, and whatever was coming next might decide everything. Ethan's eyes darted between the two glowing pairs in the darkness. One belonged to the dragon he had already sensed, the other larger, more intense, hovering farther back. Each breath he took felt heavier in the heat and smoke of the cave. He could smell sulfur and charred rock, but mixed with it was the faint, sweet aroma of his herbs drifting from the small container he had set down. It was a small comfort, but enough to buy him seconds. The tiny creature, clinging to the broken toy, watched him cautiously. Its scales shimmered faintly, catching the flickering light from a faint ember near his pack. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to act, and fast. He pulled out a small portable stove, a compact but powerful piece of human engineering. His fingers worked quickly, assembling it with the precision of someone who knew every second counted. Sparks flickered, catching the dragon's attention. They shifted uneasily, wings rattling against the walls. Ethan placed his rations in the pan, adding water from his canteen. The smell of roasting herbs and warm bread began to fill the cave more strongly. The tiny creature lifted its head slightly, sniffing the air, curious but still trembling. The first dragon's amber eyes followed the rising smoke. It bared its teeth, a low growl rumbling in its chest, but it didn't move to attack. Ethan took this as a small victory. He adjusted the flame to make the cooking smell more potent, letting the aroma drift toward the dragon and the hidden creature. Suddenly, a boulder shifted behind him with a loud crash. The second dragon flared its wings and let out a deafening roar. The sound made Ethan stagger, but he didn't fall. He grabbed a small torch from his pack, waving it to draw attention away from his stove. The first dragon snarled, snapping its head toward him. Its claws scraped against the stone, sending sparks flying. Ethan spoke aloud, though he knew the dragons might not understand his words. "I'm not your enemy," he said, keeping his tone calm but firm. "I'm only here to help." He added a pinch of herbs to the pan, fanning the smoke deliberately. The larger dragon's roar faded slightly. It sniffed the air, hesitated, then slowly lowered its wings. That brief hesitation was enough for Ethan to exhale. He had bought himself time. The tiny creature edged closer to him, drawn by the smell. Its little tail curled nervously, and it let out a soft chirp. Ethan's chest tightened. The sound was fragile and heartbreaking. He realized this cave was more than dangerous, it was grieving. The dragons weren't mindless killers. They were guardians, mourning something the humans couldn't yet understand. His mind raced. If he could reach the creature safely, maybe he could uncover the secret the dragons were guarding. Another rumble echoed from deeper within the cavern. Dust fell from the ceiling. The second dragon shifted its stance, spreading its wings wide and preparing to strike. Ethan thought quickly. He grabbed a handful of stones and threw them toward the far wall, clattering loudly. The dragon turned its attention to the noise, giving him a narrow path forward. He moved slowly, keeping low, letting the aroma of the cooking food trail ahead of him. Every step was calculated. One misstep could trigger an attack. As he approached, he noticed the broken toy in the creature's claws, a small metallic figure worn and scorched. The dragon whistling wasn't random. It was sorrow, longing, loss. Ethan's mind worked fast. He carefully set a small portion of cooked food near the creature, then stepped back. The whistling stopped. The little creature sniffed, then tentatively nibbled. Its scales glimmered brighter, eyes widening with recognition of safety and comfort. The first dragon tilted its head, observing. Ethan took a deep breath. He had proven something: humans could be more than intruders. They could offer curiosity, care, and intelligence. He spread his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm, letting the food do the talking. The dragon's tail lashed slightly, but its growl softened. He had earned a fragile respect. Then the second dragon shifted again, wings rattling. Rocks clattered. Sparks from the torch lit the cave walls. Ethan realized the threat was far from over. The larger dragon roared again, flames flickering at its lips, eyes narrowing. But this time the aroma of the cooking food seemed to give it pause. Its roar softened into a low rumble, uncertain. Ethan's mind raced. He had to act decisively. Hesitation could cost him everything. He grabbed a small cloth from his pack and waved it in the smoke, directing the scent toward the dragons. His movements were careful, precise, but human in their ingenuity. The larger dragon stepped closer, nostrils flaring, sniffing curiously. Ethan's heart pounded. One wrong move and it could end here. Yet in that instant he understood something powerful. Courage combined with intelligence could change even the most dangerous creature's behavior. Humans could shine where others failed. The tiny creature chirped again, stepping closer to the food. The first dragon's amber eyes softened, wings lowering fractionally. Ethan allowed himself a small, silent victory. The cave, once a death trap, had shifted slightly in his favor. But he knew it was only temporary. Deeper within, more mysteries awaited and more dangers. A distant rumble shook the cavern walls, louder than before. Dust fell and a sharp crack echoed. Ethan froze, realizing something massive was moving in the shadows beyond the dragons. Whatever was coming next would test him in ways he hadn't imagined. He glanced at the little creature, then at the dragons. They were watching him closely, waiting. And he knew in that split second that the next move would decide survival or death. Ethan crouched low, moving slowly through the cave, the aroma of his cooking still drifting behind him. The dragons watched, massive eyes following every movement. The little creature with the broken toy clung to the shadows, eyes wide and trembling. Ethan knew he couldn't just wander blindly. He needed a plan. Every step had to count. Every sound could mean life or death. The cave walls narrowed, forming a jagged corridor. The rumble of unseen creatures echoed through the stone. Then around a bend he saw them, dozens of dragon eggs scattered across a rocky ledge. Some were cracked, others cold as if abandoned for months. The stench of decay and loss was thick. Ethan's chest tightened. The dragons were not just aggressive, they were grieving. Their fury was tied to their young. A soft whistling echoed from one of the broken eggs. Ethan froze. There it was, the tiny creature holding its broken toy trembling on the ledge. Its mournful sound resonated through the cavern. Ethan's heart ached. These were not wild beasts. They were sentient, grieving parents protecting what little remained of their brood. He realized he could not confront the dragons head-on. He had to appeal to their instincts in a different way. He set down his cooking stove carefully, making sure the smoke and smell reached the ledge. The little creature tilted its head, sniffing the air. Ethan spoke softly, "I'm not here to take them. I only want to help." He reached slowly for the food, placing a tiny portion closer to the trembling hatchling. Its eyes widened and for a moment, it hesitated. Then it nibbled. The dragons shifted, wings rustling, watching him. Ethan could feel their massive presence pressing down, yet they did not attack. He realized the aroma was not just comforting the hatchling, it was signaling his intent to the guardians. One massive dragon, larger than the others, stepped closer, nostrils flaring. Ethan held his ground. Courage alone wouldn't suffice here. He had to show intelligence, empathy, and restraint. Carefully, he took the broken toy from the hatchling's claws and inspected it. It was scorched metal, clearly old, yet somehow familiar in design. The creature chirped again, looking at Ethan as if urging him to understand. A realization hit him. The dragon's rage, their attacks on intruders, were rooted in loss. They weren't monsters, they were protectors. This tiny being, this grieving hatchling, was the key. He decided to act. With careful, deliberate movements, he rearranged his small cooking station, fanning the smoke toward both the dragons and the hatchling. The scent of roasted herbs, bread, and warmth filled the air. The little creature stepped closer, chirping, then nuzzled the crumbs. One of the guardian dragons let out a low rumble, wings trembling, yet it remained in place. Ethan had bought more than a few seconds. He had earned their attention. Then came the unexpected, a massive shift in the cavern. Rocks tumbled from above and a boulder clattered across the floor. The larger dragon lunged toward the noise, flames licking from its mouth. Ethan ducked instinctively, rolling to the side. The tiny creature squeaked, curling closer to him. In that split second, Ethan realized he had to think faster than any human had before in this cave. Survival required both daring and cleverness. He grabbed a handful of stones and threw them toward a dark corner, distracting the lunging dragon. The massive creature paused, sniffed the air at the familiar aroma, and hesitated. Ethan seized the moment. He edged closer to the hatchling, offering crumbs and warmth. The little dragon nuzzled his hand, scales flickering under the dim light. It was tentative trust, fragile but real. The guardian dragons watched intently, wings lowered slightly, curiosity mingling with caution. Ethan understood the stakes. One wrong move could trigger a deadly attack. He moved slowly, every motion deliberate. He spoke softly, "I can help them. I can keep them safe. Please let me." His words were human, but the tone carried intent, empathy, and intelligence. A sudden roar echoed from deeper within the cave. Dust and small rocks rained down. The dragons stiffened, ready to strike, Yet this time they didn't. The hatchling chirped, frightened, and Ethan raised his hands, shielding it from view, using the smoke and smell as both defense and signal. The cave seemed to hold its breath. For a moment it was silent, tension thick. Then, a small miracle, the massive guardian lowered its head slightly, nostrils flaring toward the scent. It sniffed, hesitated, and then stepped back, wings folding just a little. Ethan's chest heaved. He had earned a fragile truce. One small victory, but a critical one. The hatchling's whistling stopped as it nibbled at the crumbs, and Ethan realized he had found a way to communicate, through patience, intelligence, and the simplest human comforts. But just as relief began to settle, a low rumble shook the cavern again. This time, it was deeper, larger, coming from somewhere beyond the ledge. Ethan froze. Something else was moving in the shadows, bigger than the dragons, more unpredictable. His pulse quickened. He had uncovered the secret of the hatchlings, gained the dragon's tentative trust, but the cave still held mysteries, dangers, and unknown creatures waiting. Ethan glanced at the hatchling, then at the guardian dragons. A choice loomed: stay and face the unknown, or retreat and risk losing the fragile bond he had forged. The air felt alive with tension. The cavern whispered of secrets older than any human, and Ethan knew the next move would define everything. In that frozen moment he realized one truth: survival alone wasn't enough. Humans could shine not just through bravery, but through empathy, intelligence, and understanding. And whatever lay ahead, he would need all of it, and more, to face the darkness waiting beyond the cave's twisting corridors. Ethan's heart pounded like a drum. The rumble from deeper in the cave had grown louder, shaking dust and loose stones from the ceiling. The guardian dragons tensed, wings spreading in readiness, claws scraping against the jagged floor. The tiny hatchling huddled against Ethan's side, trembling, eyes wide with fear. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he didn't flinch. Retreat would mean abandoning the hatchling, and risking the dragon's wrath. From the shadows, a sudden roar exploded, louder than any before. A group of scavengers, humans like him but reckless and armed, stormed into the cavern, shouting, throwing torches. Their greed was palpable. They weren't here to survive. They were here to steal the eggs, destroy the hatchlings, and leave chaos in their wake. The dragons reacted instantly. Flames licked the walls. Massive wings unfurled, sending clouds of dust and smoke swirling. One of the guardian dragons lunged, sending a cascade of rocks tumbling toward the intruders. Ethan's pulse raced. He had seconds to act. He knew brute force alone would not protect the hatchling. He had to think, to use his human mind against overwhelming odds. He grabbed a small cooking pot and threw it toward the scavengers. Sparks flew, catching their attention. The smell of his roasting herbs intensified, drifting through the smoke. The dragons hesitated, nostrils flaring, wings lowering slightly. They were confused, unsure whether the humans meant threat or sustenance. Ethan saw the opening. He needed to redirect their attention. "Stay back," he shouted, voice steady despite the chaos. He waved his arms toward the smoke and aroma, drawing the dragon's attention away from the hatchling. The little creature chirped nervously but remained close. One scavenger charged forward, reaching for the eggs. Ethan acted instantly, kicking a rock into their path. It bounced toward the cave wall, making a loud clatter. The scavenger flinched, and that hesitation bought precious seconds. The massive dragon hovered above, wings trembling. Its amber eyes fixed on Ethan, then on the intruders. Ethan realized something remarkable. The dragon wasn't attacking him. It was assessing him, judging him. He needed to prove worthiness, not with weapons but with courage and ingenuity. He dropped more crumbs and herbs, letting the scent swirl through the cavern, creating a path toward the intruders. The dragons sniffed, curiosity battling instinctive aggression. Another scavenger lunged for the hatchling, and Ethan reacted without hesitation. He grabbed a torch and waved it toward the intruder, flames flickering and lighting the cave walls. The dragon nearest him roared, fire spilling from its mouth. The scavenger froze, fear overtaking greed. Ethan saw the opportunity and shouted, "Leave them alone. You don't belong here." His voice echoed, firm and unyielding. The dragons shifted, wings slapping the stone, and the intruders stumbled back, chaos unraveling their attack. Ethan's mind raced. The cavern was alive with sound, smoke, and danger. But he had one advantage the scavengers didn't: the dragon's attention. He moved carefully, positioning himself between the hatchling and the intruders, letting the dragon's presence intimidate them further. The little creature nuzzled his shoulder, chirping softly. Courage and empathy had bought him trust, but it was still fragile. One wrong move and it could all collapse. Then came the unexpected. The largest dragon, deeper in the shadows, let out a deafening roar, shaking the cavern. Flames licked the walls, illuminating jagged stalactites. One scavenger tried to charge again, but the dragon's tail swept across the floor, knocking him off balance. Dust and sparks filled the air. Ethan ducked instinctively, then stood again, planting himself firmly, eyes fixed on the intruders. He realized the final move had to combine human cunning and bravery. He grabbed a handful of stones, tossing them strategically to create loud crashes and echoes, confusing the scavengers. The dragons followed the noises, their massive bodies moving with incredible precision. Flames and smoke created a barrier, guiding the scavengers back toward the cave entrance. Each step was a calculated risk. Ethan's heartbeat matched the thunder of wings above, but he stayed focused. At the same time he fed the hatchling crumbs, whispering encouragement. The little creature chirped, scales gleaming faintly in the firelight. The guardian dragons flanked him, forming an invisible shield. It was a human-centered strategy. Courage, intelligence, empathy, and calculated action combined to protect what mattered most. The scavengers hesitated, fear finally overtaking greed. They stumbled backward, retreating toward the cave entrance. Ethan took a deep breath. For the first time he saw a fragile piece form. The hatchling nuzzled his hand. The dragon's massive wings lowered slightly. He had survived impossible odds, not through sheer strength, but through human ingenuity, compassion, and courage. He glanced at the shadows deeper in the cavern. The rumbling had stopped, but he knew this cave held more secrets. What he had faced was only part of the danger. A faint glow flickered from a passage he hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a wall of jagged stone. Ethan's mind raced. There were more mysteries, more unknowns, waiting. The dragons had trusted him for now, but the next moment could shift everything. He looked down at the hatchling, then back at the passage. Courage alone wouldn't be enough. Intelligence, empathy, and human creativity would be his only tools. In that instant Ethan understood something profound. Humans could shine where others failed, not by overpowering but by understanding. By thinking, caring, and acting decisively, he had turned fear into trust, danger into opportunity. But the cave had more tests in store. And whatever lay beyond the jagged stones and glowing shadows would demand everything he had, and more. The cavern held its breath. Flames flickered. Dust swirled. The dragons watched. The hatchling chirped softly. And from the hidden passage something stirred. Something larger than anything Ethan had yet faced. A deeper mystery, older and stranger than dragons, was waiting. Ethan crouched beside the little hatchling, its tiny claws resting on his arm, scales warm and shimmering faintly in the flickering firelight. The dragon's massive form surrounded him, wings folded, amber eyes watching but no longer threatening. The cave, once a roaring death trap, had grown quiet. Only the soft hiss of smoldering embers and the faint whistling of the hatchling filled the air. Ethan allowed himself a small, shaky breath. He had survived. Not by weapons, not by brute strength, but by being human, smart, brave, and compassionate. The smoke from his cooking still curled upward, filling the cavern with a comforting aroma of herbs, bread, and warmth. The dragon's nostrils flared at the smell, but this time, there was no aggression. They had recognized it as different, a signal of patience, understanding, and care. Ethan carefully prepared the last portion of his rations, offering crumbs to the hatchling. The little creature chirped happily, nibbling at the food. Its eyes sparkled with trust, a tiny gesture of connection that meant more than words could ever express. The guardian dragons leaned slightly closer, curious but not threatening. Ethan's chest swelled. He had earned their respect, not as a conqueror, but as a human capable of understanding the fragile balance of life in this cave. He glanced at the scattered eggs, some cracked, some cold, some just beginning to warm. Each one represented a story, a loss, a grief the dragons carried. The smaller hatchling had survived, and for now that was enough. Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. Could he care for this creature outside the cave? Could he keep it alive while learning more about these dragons and the mysteries of their world? Every challenge ahead was dangerous, but he felt ready. He had faced impossible odds and survived. A low rumble echoed softly in the distance. Ethan froze, ears straining. One of the larger dragons lifted its head, nostrils flaring. Its amber eyes scanned the cave, wings trembling faintly. He realized the rumble wasn't anger, it was alert, a signal. Something stirred deeper inside the cavern system, something older than the dragons themselves. The scent of his cooking had calmed the guardians for now, but the cave held secrets yet unseen. He leaned back against a rock, watching the hatchling chirp and climb over his arm. The creature's trust was tangible, a fragile bond that human courage had created. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. This wasn't just survival, it was connection. Humans could thrive where others failed, not through domination, but through empathy, intelligence, and careful, decisive action. Ethan knew he had to leave soon. The cave could not remain a permanent home for the hatchling, and he had learned enough to understand that more dangers lay ahead. Yet for the first time he felt a spark of hope. Humans could interact with these dragons without fear or destruction. He could forge a new path, a bridge between species, a way to survive, to protect, and perhaps even to learn. Carefully he packed the remaining food and extinguished the small stove. The smoke lingered, carrying the comforting aroma through the cavern one last time. The dragons sniffed it, wings shifting slightly. Ethan stood, holding the hatchling close, looking at the massive guardians. They did not move to stop him. Instead, they watched, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between species. Respect. Understanding. Survival earned through human courage and compassion. As he made his way toward the cave entrance, the red sky above spilling dim light into the shadows, Ethan paused. From a narrow corridor deeper in the cave, a faint glow shimmered. It pulsed, almost alive, sending shadows dancing across the walls. The rumble from before returned, slower this time, more deliberate. Something ancient stirred beyond the dragon's lair, something the world had never seen. The hatchling chirped softly and Ethan tightened his grip. He knew he had found something extraordinary, not just in the creature but in himself. Humans could face impossible odds, adapt and thrive. Courage, intelligence, and empathy were more powerful than fear or brute force. He could survive, and perhaps even change the world in the process. The dragons flared their wings one last time, a silent farewell. Ethan felt the warmth of their acknowledgement, the trust he had earned. The little hatchling chirped again, nuzzling his shoulder, and he smiled, feeling a connection that stretched beyond species, beyond instinct. They had allowed him into their world, if only briefly. He stepped into the crimson light outside the cave. The wind carried the scent of the herbs, mingling with the smell of sulfur and ash. He looked back at the jagged mouth of the cavern. Somewhere inside, ancient mysteries waited. The dragon's trust had been hard-won, but the deeper secrets of this place, the glowing passages, the unseen forces stirring beneath the rock, remained. Ethan's pulse quickened with anticipation. The adventure was far from over. One hand held the hatchling, the other tightened around a small satchel. Ethan took a deep breath. He had survived fire, fury, and fear. He had earned trust, saved life, and proven that human courage could shine where all hope seemed lost. And now, as he glanced toward the faint, glowing corridor within the cave, he knew something even greater awaited, something that could change not just his world but the dragon's world as well. A faint, eerie hum echoed from the depths, unlike anything he had heard before. The dragon stiffened, ears twitching, eyes glowing. Ethan's gaze hardened. He knew the next challenge would demand everything he had learned: bravery, intelligence, compassion, and quick thinking. But he was ready. Humans had survived before and they could survive again. With a final glance at the dragons and a soft chirp from the hatchling, Ethan stepped forward toward the glowing corridor, toward the unknown. The cave had been conquered not by force but by humanity, and the adventure had only just begun.